Good morning and welcome to Safe Kids, Sane Parents, the Family Safety Podcast. I'm your host Jason and Richard's here with me as always. And we have another guest, Rawdon of TeenSafe. Morning, Rawdon.
Good morning. Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Absolutely thrilled to have you. Took us a couple of attempts to get hold of each other, what with my trip to India and just life in general. But we're really glad to have you here now. And
Right.
You're with a company called TeenSafe. Could you give us kind of the elevator pitch about what that is and why it's helpful to parents?
Yes, of course. TeenSafe's been around for about 4 years. We work in the digital space. Our mission is to create and serve technologies that allow kids and families to thrive in the digital age. Currently, our main product is a monitoring tool that allows parents to keep an eye out for their children and what they're up to in the digital space. We started this company because we saw the need of this huge change that's gone on. When you give a child or an adult a smartphone, it really transforms their lives. It's completely different from the PC at home, where you might have had social media online, but it was a shared computer. It was restricted by time and place. But now a smartphone is with a child all the time, and it really transforms their lives in lots of ways, which I'm sure we can go into details in a minute. But a simple example is having a camera with you wherever you go, being able to communicate in groups, use social media all the time. And if you look at the speed that this has changed, less than 5 years ago, we had about 10% of teenagers had a smartphone, and now it's over 80%. So we are the first generation of parents living this experience of huge transformation to kids' lives because they have a smartphone. Many of those things are wonderful. Children can learn, they can do so many things, they can see things, they can communicate, and keep tabs on them, which is one of the things we do. But there are a lot of dangers that come with that, and so we've created a technology that allows parents to create an account, they sign up, they onboard the device, and once that's done, they can see pretty much a large view of what the child's doing with their phone. They can see their text messages, their deleted texts, their WhatsApp messages, their Kik, Instagram, browsing history, their contacts, call history. So you can really get a view of what your child's up to. You can also see their location in real time.
Excellent. I like what you said about how it completely changes your life once you get one. I remember we're all of approximately the same age, so we spent a minimum of 25 years of our lives successfully living without a cell phone.
Correct, yeah.
I know we did it. I don't know how. And the move from a cell phone to a smartphone is in very many ways the same thing. Coming out here to Malaysia, the GPS on my phone doesn't work too well because the network's kind of slippy, and so it really only has accuracy within about 100 yards or so.
That's interesting.
Now, when you're navigating in the city, 100 yards is a long way for a GPS situation. So I'm missing some of those amazing, those, like you say, life-changing elements of having a smartphone. And
Correct.
Your point, smartphones are very powerful, very useful, very helpful, but to quote Spidey, great power comes great responsibility, and not every teenager is ready for that responsibility. And so it sounds like a very interesting product and needed.
Especially as kids are younger and younger. I mean, it's common to give a 10-year-old an iPhone.
Yeah.
And what that opens up a 10-year-old to, I don't think many 10-year-olds are really responsible or developed, and the same applies all the way up. I, age 17, probably wasn't responsible enough for a smartphone. But that's a different story.
Yeah. Yeah, my 14-year-old had his first smartphone. He's 15 now. He got his first smartphone at 14. And he never really had the interest to get into some of the safety issues of having a smartphone, but we found out he wasn't really responsible or ready enough for it when he lost it.
Right, exactly. That's a common occurrence.
Yeah.
call center where we get calls from parents saying we'd like to cancel the account, and we're like, why? Wasn't it working? It worked beautifully, but Harry's just not ready for a phone, so we might call you back in a year.
Okay. Well, that's helpful. Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing, because teenagers, they want more freedom, and really they get to the point where deserves may be the wrong word, but I'll go ahead and use it, deserve more freedom, but they may or may not be ready for it. And then the other flip side of that is not only may they be ready for it, they might not be ready for it, but during those years between becoming a teenager and going off to college or going off into the military or going off to work in the real world, we need to start letting them experiment with autonomy and responsibilities and freedom and making their own choices, so that when they do leave the home and become adults, it's not the first time that they have to deal with responsibilities. So, and that's, you know, that's kind of the trouble of parenting teens in a nutshell, striking that balance while keeping your child safe. Now, you know, I've got the two children. One is 15, the other one's 5, so I'm only really dealing with one teenager right now. And Rawdon, you said you have a 7-year-old. Richard, you got teens these days as well.
I do. My oldest is 18 and going off to college in September for her first year. And she's leaving, we're in New Hampshire, and she's heading off to the University of Alabama, so she's going halfway across the country.
Wow.
And we're very glad that she is, but at the same time, we're, you know, a little anxious. My youngest is 8. I have an 8-year-old, a 10-year-old, and an 18-year-old. They're all girls. I have 3 girls. And our 2 youngest, our 8 and our 10-year-old, they don't yet have phones, but they have iPods. And because they don't have the data capabilities and the phone call capabilities of an iPhone or a smartphone or any phone for that matter, there are a number of apps that allow you to control their texting capacity and other things like that. But we're sort of headed into that place where, you know, my 18-year-old has, I think she got her first smartphone, her iPhone, at 15 or 16. It's about 3 years ago. And so I wanted to ask you, and I think this would probably is a question you get from many potential customers or people who are interested in your product, will it work on just an iPod that is not an iPhone? So if my girls just have the text apps, I'm sorry?
It'll work on an iPod Touch, but not all the services that are available on an iPhone are available on an iPod. So, for example, you can see iMessage you can use on an iPod Touch, but you wouldn't have on an iPhone. They look the same as an SMS anyway. So your child can't send an SMS, but they can send an iMessage. They could also be using it for Kick Messenger, and so you could see that. You could see the Safari browsing history as well. And contact. So it would be a smaller set, but because there is a reduced amount of things they can do with the iPod Touch. But interestingly enough, one of the things that parents have done, and you're probably already aware of this, is not realizing how powerful an iPod Touch is, because once it's on a network, whether it's Wi-Fi, obviously, is that it can do many of the things a phone can do. A child can do Facebook, they can do Instagram, they can do Kick, they can do Snapchat. It's an app, just you know, the same. So parents should be aware that an iPod Touch is a very powerful tool and needs to be treated almost with as much respect and privilege as an iPhone.
You know, that brings up a very good point for parenting safety on the web in general. I think a lot of parents, myself included, and I actually researched this and worked in internet service for quite a while back in my 20s. I don't think a lot of parents are aware of the extent of and the power of smartphones, how many things they can do and how many different places they can do them, how many opportunities there are for a teen to get into trouble accidentally.
Well, let's take one example, like Kick Messenger, which is one of the things we monitor. Kick Messenger is a simple messaging product, just like texting. But one of the things that not many people are aware of is that you can text people without being a contact. So if you ever test out Kick, I don't actually use Kick personally, but I have it on my phone, and every now and again I just get a little random person sending me a message, and so we've just recently we get a lot of calls to our call center of parents who've discovered, particularly on Kick Messenger, that their children are getting approached and groomed for very unpleasant activities using Kick Messenger, and they're asking for advice on what to do with that. It's a very popular platform with kids, but one of the things that I think, stepping back, fundamentally a parent needs to do is understand that these devices are so powerful and such a big part of their lives. You just need to start to look at that phone in their digital lives, and you have to parent it as much, that part of their lives, as their real physical life. And the difference is that phone's with them the whole time, and it causes changes of behavior. And I'll give you another example. When you were a kid at school, age 14, could you imagine a girl taking a picture of herself, printing it up, photocopying it, and just handing it around to everyone at school? That's what goes on today with sexting. There's a great article in the New Yorker recently. Just Google New Yorker magazine sexting, and there was a survey that they did in South Texas at 8 high schools, and they interviewed sophomore year. 63% admitted to requesting an explicit image, and 60% admitted to sending one or sharing one. And sexting is something, because you're not there in the playground at the time of the transmission. There's a difference between time and place that encourages a change of behavior among kids. And anecdotally, when the children are asked about what they think of this behavior, technically under the law, if you send, even if you're a minor sending it, it's child porn to have an image of a minor of explicit nature. Now, there haven't been cases yet in South Texas of that being pushed, but we are seeing cases in states like Pennsylvania where police are taking action on these things. And the child, they're sharing this content and they don't realize the effects of what they're doing. And it's one thing to send an image of yourself to your boyfriend, and some liberal families might not mind that. It might be that, our job here is not to judge people's values. But a lot of families wouldn't like that. Parents wouldn't like that. But then often what happens is the recipient of the image then shares it with other people. And again, not infrequently, those images get posted into public domain. There are Instagrams at schools where it's just fully loaded with images of all the girls who've been sending them, and the boys post them on Instagram. They're like trophies. So, this kind of behavior is for many parents completely unacceptable, and many parents are finding out this the hard way when it's too late. And what we think is monitoring is really, really important, because a parent can see what's going on, see inappropriate behavior, create teachable moments out of it, communicate with their kids, and grow. And look, no child's ever going to be perfect, and this shenanigans are always going to go on. But it's too much, we believe, just to blindly give your child a phone and expect them to be responsible and get on with it, especially when they're younger.
That's a great point, and one of the things that leads into that I think is really important is the parent's role of responsibility. That when you give your child something so powerful, they are trusting that you know what that thing is capable of, and that they're taking it like, oh, well, mom and dad are giving it to me, and they say that I can do these things or I can't do these other things. But the parents oftentimes do that in an ignorance of what the real power and powerful potential of that thing that they're giving to their children is. And so one of the things I like about how you're speaking and about what your product does is this awareness of putting it back to, we as parents need to be fully and completely aware, and regardless of what our morality is, regardless of what our positions on certain things are, when we give our children something that is so life-changing, so powerful, we have to do so fully informed, or as completely informed as we can be, and with all of the tools capable to monitor and to arrest potentially damaging behaviors that might arise as a result of it. And that responsibility to do that is our responsibility as parents. Of course, our children are going to do things that we don't like. It's the nature of being a human being. We are not going to be able to stop all of our children from doing the things that they want to do. They're going to get into trouble, just like we did, just like their kids will, just like our parents did. But it's the capacity to parent through that and to take the responsibility as parents of guiding them through that process. And so there is this this tone, this thread through what you're saying that puts that responsibility for that knowledge and control of that process back on the parents. And so
Right.
I really like that.
One of the things that the biggest topics that we talk about and is privacy of the child and boundaries. I recently went to Australia to launch TeenSafe there, and the press were very concerned about child privacy, and they had experts saying, look, something like TeenSafe is a complete breach of children's privacy. If you invade that privacy, you lose trust, and we don't think, many of the experts in Australia don't think it's a good idea. Now, we spend a lot of time thinking about this, and first thing I always say is breaching your child's privacy is completely a no-no, and using a tool like TeenSafe requires very thoughtful, considerate parenting. And I've always painted certain things. If there are certain situations that your child might be in where it's not just your right to know, it's your responsibility to know. If your child getting groomed and asked to do sexual things, are they sharing inappropriate content? Are they looking at inappropriate? Are they selling drugs? Are they where they're supposed to be? All of these questions. Bullying is. We work with an organization here in the US called Stand for the Silent. The people who started that organization a few years ago, the mother is a teacher, the father is a metal worker. Their son was bullied for many years, and when he retaliated, he was suspended from school. Mum took him home, went back to work, came back, and he'd taken his life. And they started an organization to go and talk to schools around the country and in Australia, actually, to explain the dangers of bullying, what it can do to kids, how it's changed in the digital age, how unpleasant it is, and what you can do to stop it. And when we found out about them, when we first, he said, well, if we'd known how miserable and what our child was going through. His mum was a teacher at the school, and she wasn't aware of how acute this was. And TeenSafe, has helped many parents who've discovered their children are being bullied or are bullies, which is just as bad, and they can then do something about it and take action before an issue becomes potentially a tragedy or a problem. And so the privacy thing is all about making a judgment. Don't use TeenSafe to replace the dinner conversation to find out how was Sally's afternoon at school, or what did they think of that movie. And it's not a tool. You could use that. You could use it for that, but that's not what we recommend. It's used for keeping your child safe and looking for these issues. So as your child gets more grown up and independent, you should use TeenSafe every day or even every month. You should only use it when you feel that you want to check in and see that she's okay, or if you're a little concerned about something. And don't, but it's just like when you've got a little 2-year-old or a 1-year-old, you take them to their first play date and you stay there the whole time and you watch their every move. And then at a certain point, you'll drop them off and go and do your errands and then come back and pick them up. And then they'll be able to go with the other parent over there, and the parent will bring them back. And eventually they'll be going to the mall and to the pub on their own. It's a growing, stage by stage building of trust. As your child gets stronger and more responsible, they can do more. It's the same in the digital age. When a 9-year-old has a smartphone, in most cases you probably want to keep a really close eye. My daughter said she's 7. She doesn't have a smartphone yet. When she gets one, I'll say, so here's your first iPhone. By the way, we're keeping an eye out for you. And because of her nature and her age, she's going to be really receptive and go, thanks, I feel more protected because of it. But when she's 14, I don't want to be looking at all her stuff, assuming that she's pretty cool and sorted out. You know,
Sure.
I'm pretty safe on that. So, you know, it's one of the things where it's not cut and dry. It's all about your own parenting. It's a tool.
Yeah. Well, it's not a substitute for responsible parenting. It's not like you go, oh, well, now I don't have to parent anymore because there's an app for that.
Yeah.
That's not what it is.
This conversation seems very analogous to driving. You know, when your child gets a driver's license, it fundamentally changes their lives, and it puts a tool in their hands that is, while extremely useful, can also be extremely dangerous, life-altering, life-ending.
Correct.
And the data on that is very much on the side of using TeenSafe to be as a monitor. I can't remember the trade term, but the little mirror you put behind the camera you put behind the rear of your mirror that gives you a broadcast of what's going on in the driver's seat and the passenger seat. The studies on that have shown that it makes teens drive safer whether or not you're watching.
Correct.
Because you might be watching.
Yeah.
And just as in the States at least, when a child starts driving, by law the parents got to be in the car with them. And then after that's over, most states have this kind of graduated apprentice license where you're not allowed to drive at night, you're not allowed to drive with other teens in the car. And then as that fades and they get more and more responsibility without wrecking the car or anything, you start giving them more freedom to use the car, you let them take them out for longer periods of time, you ask who's going to be in the car less. And it's that same thing, just like with their use of the internet, where you want to know everything that's going on in the car at first, but as they demonstrate more responsibility and more good sense, you ask fewer questions and you worry about it less. And then by the time they're a full adult out there with their own car, driving their own kids, you don't worry about it too much.
Correct. That's
I remember the line when I'm sorry. There's sometimes a delay and that ends up happening. I apologize. I remember when my daughter first had that eye-opening moment, my 10-year-old, that she realized that anything that she puts into her phone, into her email, into her iMessage, anything like that, is not private. That it's readable by anyone, that it stays there forever, that anybody can find out that on this day she sent this and said exactly this. And I don't even remember what the instigating instance was where we had this conversation, but she's 10 years old, and I said to her, no, honey, anything that you do on any computer, anything that you write, any email that you send, any website you go to, all of that is tracked and viewable by anybody who has the technology and the know-how or wants to know. And her eyes got really big, and she was like, everything? And I'm like, everything. Nothing is private. There really is no private for people who want to see what it is that you have. Passwords get stolen. Accounts get hacked. People's homes get broken into. People stalk and find people through the internet. And that was one of those moments for her where I remember various moments like that of my own through my life where there was this sort of pivotal realization, and then the sort of world was split up into before I knew this thing and after. And so I recently had this moment with my child where we had this conversation. She really realized that, oh wow, all of this is being recorded, all of this is findable, all of this is trackable, traceable, and there really none of it is. I can tell her that I will never look at your email and I will never invade your privacy, but that doesn't mean that somebody else won't hack her account. It's still not truly private. And if you put it out there on the internet in any capacity, it's not private. And that's something that a surprising number of teens and adults that I have spoken to don't quite really have it realized that that's the case. And that often leads to many problems. And so this obviously fills a great place where your product comes in and helps to educate and provide a tool. But I recently had that experience with my own child. having that conversation. And I think that's a great, wonderful way for me to segue into her why it is that when she gets her first phone, which will be in a few years, it'll have TeenSafe on it, or something, right? So anyway,
a really important point, I think, where the thing about that car analogy that I brought up a minute ago was that we're fundamentally pretty well able to parent our kids through being able to drive. Hey, Richard, do you have speakers on? Because I'm hearing a big echo right now.
yeah, is that better?
Much. There we go. So we're fundamentally pretty. No, we still got the echo. We'll just kind of power through it. But we're fundamentally able to parent new drivers because driving hasn't changed significantly since we learned to drive. It's, the cars are a little nicer, there's some technologies, but it's the same thing. The responsibilities are the same. On the other hand, none of us had an experience in our childhoods like having a cell phone or a smartphone. We don't get it. And so I think one of the big questions we have for you, Rawdon, is what are the dangers?
Right. I mean, I think that, going back to what we were saying before about the fact that this device is with them the whole time and everywhere they go, it affects behavior in all sorts of different ways. I think, in no particular order, bullying, for example, bullying is horrible in whatever way it happens. But when we were kids, I was the smallest in my year at school, and I got picked on for it. I learned to fight back, but it was always in the playground. I'd get home, I had my own mates, and you'd get away from it, and it didn't take over my life. But, today, if you have a smartphone and somebody decides to take a picture of you and embarrass you or shame you, it goes out to the whole school, and it goes beyond that. And then it doesn't stop at the end of school. It goes on. It never goes away. And so it's so accelerated and powerful, this tool. And sadly, we read all too much, and we've seen so many cases of lives that have been destroyed by cyberbullying. It's a very unpleasant thing to go through, and I think as grown-ups, we can't really relate to it because, you don't understand what it's like to when social media is so important to you and your life, and your self-worth as a child is often represented by how many likes you got and how much your how many friends you've got and how your popularity, and that can be taken down in a really easy way. And so bullying is certainly one that's a danger. We've already spoken about grooming, and again, it goes on more often than one might think. This concept of people either pretending that there's somebody they're not in order to get somebody to go and do something that they shouldn't be doing, or even acquaintances, being able to strike relationships and be inappropriate online where it's absolutely wrong. It's one thing for two teenagers to be inappropriate with each other. It's an even worse and terrible thing for an adult. And grooming's nothing new. It's been going on since internet existed, and any kind of gaming with open forums, it goes on there. But social media just allows it to be more ubiquitous and all the time. I think another issue that children are facing is sexting, sending out images of themselves. Distraction is a huge thing. We're going to be soon launching tools that allow parents not only to monitor but to manage what their children are doing, but just the ability to be distracted, to waste time, is huge. Gone are the days where you can play the Xbox for an hour a day. The just basic amount of screen time that these devices cause. Schools are often trying in vain to prevent children from doing these. Children are very good at getting around the rules. The LAUSD offered kids iPads that were restricted. Within a week, a child had not only worked out but posted online so all their friends could hack around it and use the iPad for anything they wanted. Fatigue is another thing. Parents don't realise that kids are just there with the iPad under the covers with their phone. Rule 101 is that phone gets taken away at bedtime. Even for older teens, parents need to be aware of the usage of these devices, and kids need to use them responsibly. And many studies have shown child fatigue has gone up hugely because they're gaming, socializing well into the night when they should be asleep. It's one thing to be tired from too much studying, too much play, and that kind of thing, but too much screen time is a huge issue. I think those are some of the big ones. Replacing the time with the phone and making sure that doesn't not only eat into sleep but eats into family social time, something that we all as families suffer. Put the phone down at dinner time, put it away. I was speaking to one of an expert about this who does research into child screen time over at the University of Pennsylvania, and she was explaining what a huge issue and how this is affecting the ability to learn, and all sorts of studies are coming out. Ability to pay attention, because many kids are multitasking. Casual gaming, for example, where you're just playing these games that are very addictive and simple, affect children's ability to concentrate. Honest play and challenges are another thing, because everything's so available and ubiquitous on the phone and on the internet, full stop, that one study has been showing that kids often think that they can do something just because they've watched 4 YouTube videos on it. So this study was about knitting, and they showed children who couldn't knit 4 videos, and after each video asked them, how do you think you can do with knitting? Oh yeah, I can knit now. And so getting away from the old standard play or offline behavior where you do things that are hard and challenging. Study is one of them. Too much screen time and too much distraction has all of these dangers. They're less dangerous, you could say, than some of the things I mentioned before, but they are very, very common and there. So, again, beyond monitoring, on our tool you can see the amount of what kids are looking at and what they're doing and what they're talking about, and that's useful in its own right. But just plain, son, the phone goes away. Put it away. You can have it back later. And the problem is for many parents who've already gone down the rabbit hole, they've already handed their child a smartphone. And one of the things that we find with our customers is many are actually, almost, not scared is the wrong word, but they don't want to rock their child's boats. And once they've given a child the device, it's opening Pandora's box, and the child takes it as a right and not a privilege to have this device. So one of the challenges for our Android product is you need to get the device in order to set it up. With our iPhone product, you can just do it through our website, and you need to have their credentials, but you don't need the device. And so many of our Android customers are like, I can't get Harry's phone. He won't give it to me. He certainly won't give me the password. And most people react, well, you pay for that phone? It's your phone. No, but you don't understand. He won't give me the phone. And so what happens is, again, this is going back full circle to the beginning of the thing, parents need to be really, really thoughtful when they first hand Harry the phone. It's a huge opportunity to sit down, and what we recommend is actually writing down a contract with the child and make an agreement. Think about all the things that the implications, and many of which we've touched in this conversation, about what the implications are, and go, look, here are the rules. You get the device, you can use it for this, this, and this. You can't use it for that, that, and that. And it needs to be away at dinner time, school. Every family's different, rules are different, but to make that agreement at the point of first giving them the device sets those rules. And children, once their expectations and the agreements are set, they normally know the deal, and you can work with that. It's much easier than trying to undo something that's already there.
Interesting. And yeah, I think that's the thing. A thing that's developing here about how TeenSafe and other tools like that are not replacements for parenting, but a tool to augment your parenting.
Yes.
That what is it? The hackers call it social engineering. Is still going to be your first and foremost tool. And what this just gives you is it gives you further information, and if necessary, it sounds like it also offers some hard controls where you can turn off some functionality.
That's coming soon. Not yet, but it's up in the pipeline.
I know I could use that. For example, the first time my oldest got grounded off of his smartphone, it was 1 o'clock in the morning. I was finishing a project I was doing for a client, and I had Facebook up in the corner. And I get an announcement that DJ Brick liked a photo I put up. And so I walk into the room, and there he is with a little phone. Like, really?
Yeah.
But we can't count on lucking out like that. You know,
No.
kids often do dumb things, a little more often than adults do dumb things.
Well, I think that's a very interesting point because children are also quite clever at presenting themselves. One of our customers we were talking to recently, she's a working single mum, 13-year-old daughter, who, she thought she was fine. Then she got some bad reports from school. They asked her to come in, and so they recommended TeenSafe. So she did TeenSafe. She told her daughter, "Look, I'm going to be watching you on TeenSafe," and neither of them were prepared for what happened next. The daughter had no idea about what TeenSafe meant and what it was going to show Mum. Mum had no idea that her daughter behaved in a completely, she was almost a different person, and in the way she behaved online, and you could say in the way she was when she was at school or with her friends, just generally. And she was really they were both traumatized when they confronted each other. Well, Mum confronted daughter. Daughter said, "How dare you read all of this?" And Mother said, "Well, how dare you behave like this?" And Mum really was totally shocked and had no idea, because children are very good at behaving one way to Mum and Dad. They're trained to do it in a way. We train them to behave like that, and then be different with their kid. And that's again normal to hang out with your buddies. You behave differently, but sometimes that behavior becomes extremely inappropriate, and you have no idea because they're so good at hiding it from us. So what they did, their turnaround, which is a really nice story, is she said, "Look, I'm going to only use TeenSafe under these conditions, and I'm not going to go on every day. I'm going to check, and I will do it if I feel that you're being inappropriate, but we'll always talk about that." So Mum still gets to use TeenSafe in a way to keep her child safe and keep tabs on her to make sure she's more appropriate and create learning moments out of it, but not completely invading her child's privacy. And daughter gets to feel, "Look, I know my mum's looking out. I have to accept that. That's the way it is. But I feel confident that she's not watching my every move." And so they found their balance, and that's working for them now. And again, that's a really nice story about how individual parenting relationships have to inform the way you do these kind of things.
I think a point that you brought up that's, excuse me, core to child safety and even adult safety online is there's this perception among parents, and I think among teenagers too, that what's happening in the virtual world isn't real. I mean, we call it the virtual world. What happens online is different than what happens between people. We have our Facebook friends who we probably communicate with more and share more intimate ideas and have longer discussions with than the guys from work that we grab a beer with once in a while. But the guys from work that we grab a beer once in a while are our real friends, where our Facebook acquaintances aren't.
Yeah.
And I think parents tend to mitigate, maybe or not mitigate, but minimize, probably subconsciously or maybe fully consciously, the potential risks and the degree to which online life is part of their kids' lives.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I know we talked about it earlier, but the bullying, what it can lead to. online bullying, yes, you call it virtual. Your children being traumatized, miserable, sadly, occasionally to the point of suicide. I think that's very real life. And, you know, it's a perfect example of how you cannot treat this virtual, digital, mobile life as anything but real and very, very important in your child's growth.
Let me ask you, Rawdon, what are some of the differences between the iPhone and the Android product? You mentioned a little bit of the difference in terms of setup. Is there any additional difference in terms of the functionality? Because I'm in one of those households where my wife and my daughters are Macs and I'm Tuesday. So I've got a Android device there on iPhone.
Yeah, okay, that's a really good question. From a parent's access point of view, our service isn't an app. It's actually a web. It's like signing into your email online. It comes through a browser, so you can access it from your computer, from your phone, through the phone's browser, whether it's an iPhone or an Android. So as a parent, it doesn't really matter what kind of device you have. The service is the same. Now the child's device, you're right, we have a slightly different service and a way the service works slightly differently between iPhone and Android. For an iPhone, the parent, they get the device, all they need to know is their child's Apple ID and password. And the phone has to be set to backup. And what we do is, once that's in, we go in and grab that backup and open it up from the cloud and show parents all the data that's inside the phone's backup in a meaningful way. Hence all the text messages, deleted text, iMessage, all the things I mentioned earlier. With Android, the parent needs to install a small agent or a small app that is hidden onto the device. And so the setup walks you through, takes 1 or 2 steps longer. But the advantage of that is that agent is sending all the data directly from the phone to our servers and then showing it to the parent. And so the only other difference is WhatsApp and Kik at the moment aren't available on our Android child product, but they're being improved. Another thing I think that's really worth talking about is data privacy and the law. It's a huge, as you mentioned about privacy earlier, it's a huge theme for all of us. Is my data private, and how does privacy touch TeenSafe? And the first thing is, the law says here in the US that if you pay the phone bill and your child is 17 or under, and you're their legal guardian, you have every right as if it was your own data. That's what the law says in terms of the parent's right to the data. What we say is the child data or the device data, the only people who can see that is the account holder or the parent. So the data itself is a black box, and the only person who should ever see that data is the parent. And we believe fundamentally in that privacy. And what we're implementing now, as soon as the child turns 18, we will actually tell the parent, sorry, congratulations, you've now got an 18-year-old, you can't use TeenSafe anymore, because we need to stand by. TeenSafe was built by parents for parents, not as a spyware tool. It's built around the law and around the ethics that we all believe in. And one of the reasons that we created TeenSafe was at the time of founding, we were looking around for services, and all we could find were these spyware tools that were designed for, kind of hackers and people who want to spy on their wives. You could turn on the different tools, things like that. So, no, that was it.
So
that's very interesting. No, go ahead, Jason. I'm sorry.
So that brings up a question that I think a lot of our parents are going to have, which is when it's time to sit down and talk to your kid about TeenSafe. I mean, if your kid doesn't have a phone, you can have it be part of the, here's your phone, there are many like it, but this one is yours, and you get to have TeenSafe too. But if your kid already has a phone and you haven't brought on TeenSafe, what are some ways you've heard of that have been successful ways of getting a teen to buy into that and establish and have it not feel like a violation of privacy, have it not feel like a fundamental statement of distrust?
Yeah, I think that's huge, and there are basically two ways to go, and it really depends on your situation and what your child's like. If you feel that you're able to have that conversation with your child and explain to them the need and the situation and the challenges and your concerns and why you want to use TeenSafe to keep them safe, and if you feel that your child would be at all responsive to that, then that is definitely the best way to go. And you say, these are my concerns, these are the things I'm worried about, and I want to have an open discussion, and I want to tell you what I'm thinking of doing. Most parents can expect, many parents we talk to about this will initially say, there is no way my child, my 15-year-old, will be receptive to this. And then they think, some have turnarounds, they go, actually I can see an angle on this if I'm really honest and, show my concerns. It's easier when they're younger. As they get older, you're going to, some parents have to make the hard choice of going, look, if I tell my child I'm doing this, they're just going to kick back and rebel, and it's not going to work. And we hear that time and time again. And so the tough option then is to go, well, should I use TeenSafe without informing them? And in certain cases, even though we don't recommend it normally, the answer is yes. We have parents who just don't know where their child is. This account is their last chance to know that their 16-year-old is still alive, or the 16-year-old just disappears for days, or they suspect they're in dealing drugs, or they suspect, all sorts of things. And if you don't have the ability, not all families are able to operate in the realm of ease and comfort and security and the child's okay. Many families have problem children and have children that simply will not accept. And TeenSafe for a parent, when you're a parent who's worried about your child's safety, what we say is their safety and their privacy and even trust is trumped. Sorry, let me repeat that. Privacy and trust is trumped by safety. At the end of it, it's our responsibility as parents until they're of a certain age to keep them safe. And sometimes that really means keeping them alive, or keeping them out of prison, or knowing where they are. And in those cases, we believe that you should consider using TeenSafe without informing the child. And that is not what we recommend all the time, but sometimes it's the only way.
Well, and that gets into something that as parents, none of us really want to talk about. As parents, none of us really want to talk about what happens if my child is abducted. What happens if something very, very serious, physically life-threatening happens to my child? And it's one of the reasons why parents involve their children in martial arts. It's one of the reasons why people bring their kids to me and to my business. And a lot of times there's this, you brought up both ends of this. You brought up the legal end of it in terms of if you're going to deal with looking at other people's data, what are the limitations that are upon that? And there was actually a famous constitutional case called Deshani versus Winnebago in 1989, in which the Supreme Court ruled that the Constitution does not protect children from their parents and the parents' parenting decisions. In general, in most cases. So you have sort of that side of it, but then you also have the side of, well, how do you convince your child, well, there's this element of something really awful might happen to you. And if it does, something like this might be the last link that we have to be able to find you and rescue you. Yeah. And you think about all of the instances that occur on a daily basis where we're worried that something might happen to our child, where that might be a factor. And you've presented a number of different situations where we can both legally, ethically, socially, morally to our children can convince them, or at least have an entrance point to start the conversation with them that none of us really want to have, but that we all have to have.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's a really good thought, actually. I think, you know, when you show a child that side of things, they might agree more comfortably. We had a case a few months ago that was in the press of a mother who found out that her daughter was off to meet a gentleman at a motel like 200 miles away. And she found out, she got alerted the police, and they got to the motel just before she arrived, and was able to get the guy. And he was a grown-up man. She was a 15-year-old. And the police took the TeenSafe account and used it to follow the GPS to locate her, and the information on the text messages to get the address. There's a classic example of, my God, thank God I was able to use that tool, and thank God I did. The other side of things is it's difficult for us because we don't want to sell a product completely on fear-mongering either. We don't feel that, every parent should be worrying every minute of the day about these things. And so on one side, yes, our tool can help on those extreme things, but it also helps on the more day-to-day parts of parenting as well that we already talked about. I've got to bounce, actually. How do you guys want to wrap this up?
Real quick, give us the website where people can find out about TeenSafe.
Yes, so you just go to teensafe.com, and we have a really nice section on there called Teenology, which is full of really useful advice. There's some really excellent infographics and really some great videos on basically the 101 on parenting. A lot of the things I've been talking about are written up there. If you want to try the service, we offer a free 7-day trial. Another useful thing about it is there's no limit to the number of devices. So if you've got numerous kids with numerous devices, it all comes into the same subscription, which is after the 7 days, it's $14.95 a month, and you can cancel any time. We also have a great call center who will answer any questions about how to get the devices working. We really want to help parents. For many of us, these things aren't as easy as they would be for our kids, so we're here to lend a hand on helping out. And I suppose I'd like to end by saying, this is a brave new world for parents, this digital mobile age, and what we're trying to do is really be a toolbox and a solution to really help parents be the best they can be. And once parents understand that this is just like any other part of parenting, it's just one piece of it, and they embrace us like that, we feel it's a really, really valuable thing to be doing. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. Again, this is TeenSafe, and I knew a little about it before this started. I know more about it now, and I have to admit I'm definitely going to check that out for my boy.
Great. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for coming on. I know that it took a little bit of doing for you to be here, so I really appreciate you taking the time for it.
Much appreciated. Thanks for having me, gents.
And thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Cheers.
All right. Thanks. All right, Richie, do you want to sign us out?
Very good. And as always, everyone, you are stronger than you think you are.